John, we've been allowed to talk about some real life cases and some examples, especially examples of how our two areas overlap. So questions for each other.
So a couple of cases with situations where we may work together on. I'm a 27-year-old, I work in the armed forces and I got engaged to my partner last year. We've just discovered we're expecting our first child together, so we've postponed our wedding until after we become parents. Neither of us have seen a lawyer, so are there any legal things we need to be thinking about? So from a family perspective, I suppose the first thing would be congratulations, that's great. And I think the thing we will be talking about is what their situations and their assets are now. Is there anything they need to look at preserving for themselves by part of a prenuptial agreement? So from the financial side, we would look at whether there's a prenuptial agreement. And then from a family side, we would also think about, okay, well, what would happen to the child if something happens to one or both of them, really? And I guess that would probably feed into a bit more where you would come in.
Yeah, from a will's perspective, obviously guardianship for the child. Bear in mind they're not married, so it's really important for them to make a will, especially if they want each other to inherit or if they own assets together, and they need to think about that. Bear in mind that they are going to get married, I think you said. So marriage cancels a will. So in the will, do they want to make provision for that? So in expectation of marriage clause. So they could say, you know, if we are going to get married, we don't want the will cancelled by us getting married. So really the young child, what happens if both of them die as well? Who's going to look after the child? Who's going to look after the assets for that child? And also if they're going to get married, do they want that will to be cancelled, or do they want that will to continue? I have a quite a long one here actually. So 65 years old and fully retired from teaching. I have a private pension, teaching pension and a will, but it is the same. The will is the same I had 6 years ago when my husband died unexpectedly. I inherited all of our matrimonial assets when he died. I have 3 grown-up children. 2 are married with their own children and 1 lives abroad with his partner. I feel ready for a new chapter and I've put the family home on the market, so I'm moving. Once it's sold, what do I need to do? I'm in a new relationship. I have no intention of remarrying and would like to leave any money I can to my family. So from a sort of private client perspective, again, look to review your will. Your previous will might have your husband who's now passed away in your will. So it's common for spouses to appoint each other as the executor, for example, to administer the estate. So because her husband's passed away, put somebody else in there, maybe the children. New partner, are they buying a property together? Because she's selling her property. So new partner, do you want to leave provision for him to be able to stay in the property for a certain period of time or during his life? So think about what happens to, if you die, what happens to that partner, what happens to your assets, and then ensuring that you provide provision for your children. The person has said that she wants to make sure that, you know, she's no intention of remarrying, but would like to leave any money she has to her family. So definitely time to review your will. She needs to obviously think about power of attorney. If she's already made one, she might have already put her husband who's passed away as her attorney, so she might want to review that or have a look if she already had replacement attorneys in there. So she might be able to continue with the document. So from a private client perspective, it's definitely reviewing the will and the power of attorney.
So from a family perspective, there's two different elements really. One, I guess, would be what's going to be happening to the property that you're going to be moving into with your partner if you are purchasing together. Do you need something like a cohabitation agreement if you're not looking at marrying? If you are, for example, selling your home now and investing a large chunk of that money as a deposit for your new property, I'd be saying you need to make sure that you have something in place through the cohabitation agreement, especially if you're going to be putting the property in joint names, to make sure that what you are investing in the property is set aside as your own, so ring fencing it. Because if you are going to be buying the property with your partner and it goes in joint names, then the presumption, as we've spoken about previously, would be that you would own the equity jointly. And then the second element of that would be if you are going to be taking any of the money out of the house that you're selling and then using it to gift to your children, you'd have to look at what their circumstances are. If they are in a relationship and they're planning on getting married, then you might want them to enter into a prenuptial agreement. Or if they are living with a partner, then you may want them to enter into a cohabitation agreement as well. So we would have to sit down and chat really about what each of your children's circumstances are and making sure that any legacies or gifts that you leave them are solely for them, unless you intend otherwise.
And it's often a time when somebody's lost a loved one and they have inherited. It's a time where they realise what their wealth actually is. So maybe think about, is there any sort of estate planning and tax planning that I can do now? Because often that's a time where you realise what you've inherited and that you can afford to start giving some money away, looking after the children, etc., etc. So.
And I guess their children may want to look at their own future planning. Like you said, if they're going to inherit, if they've got their own children, do they need to put in place trusts or something for them as well?
Yeah.